All right, so what we have here, good old 2025 Honda Foreman 520 foot shift. Last trip, 300 plus miles overland, about 4 days, 3 nights around the Steens Mountain. We had an issue with this ATV rack. And this ATV rack here, well, it broke. Now, according to Honda, and everything they say, it's not a manufacturer's defect. Essentially, they believe it was overloaded beyond its, I believe it's right here, 176 pound capacity, which it was not. But the terrain was rugged enough, and it had some weight on it, and the cage I had on it, and all that. But at most, it probably had maybe 120 pounds, more like 90 pounds. But the terrain was a bit much for it, and it broke the rack. So what we have here from Honda, from the dealer, is a replacement rack. I'll open the box here and see all what comes in the box from the dealer. For the replacement rack. So frankly, the rack was about a little under $200. And parts and labor, not under warranty, to cover the rack, re-welding the tabs that they say broke and everything else, is about $500 in labor. And for me, I'm not really ready to pay that. I'd rather do it myself. So I'm going to do attempting here today and see if I can film it at least. The replacement of the rear rack assembly. Actually, it looks a lot less than what I was thinking it might be. For how in depth the rack is. Alrighty. Here it is. Looks like it's probably going to be pretty straightforward. In case you're wondering, I just got this camera to have some fun with. It's the 360 Go Ultra. So what I think I'm going to do is get my tools out over here and start taking apart the plastics on the back of this, and then get a look for what all's going on and what all I need to actually do and fix and replace. So yeah, I'm going to pause it right here and see what I can do to get these plastics off. Alright, well, taking apart my wiring, solid state relay, taking everything out of here, 12mm bolts, all the brackets. Funny enough, the bracket broke here, broke across here. All the welds that held the brackets, that held the rack, are actually what broke. The brackets too, I got sheared off, but most of the welds on these, and this one's bent a bit, whatnot, didn't fully break. But all the welds to the frame of the ATV, looks like all the welds just broke. For the brackets was the primary failure point. So looks like they're all going to have to be pounded back, bent back, whichever, re-welded. But with all the tabs, and there's all these little push tabs up in here for around the rear of the fenders, or yeah, and then one it's a 5mm hex or Allen with a 10mm nut on the back side, just gets right up in these front points here, and the rest are those little plastic push rivets. And then the bolts for the hardware, and once disconnecting all the wiring and such, should, besides my little extra wiring there, because the wiring and whatnot, I'm free. Pop that little zip tie. There we go. And this wire, pull it on through. And I'll rewire all that later, but this is essentially it. Fender's off, but yep, the welds right up here, the bracket and the welds broke, and the bracket and the welds broke. Could have done a better job with the design. I think they could have done some more cross braces and better support coming up off the frame for this solid rear axle monoshock design. I think it could have had a little better design. Maybe a little bit better brackets that bolt on, or sorry, not bolt on, weld onto the frame. Something that just made it a little bit more durable. But well, I'm gonna take this rack off, get this new one put up, clean off the areas, and since I got the electrical and everything disconnected, I'm gonna get the MIG welder out and see if I can re-weld these things and get the plastic back on and get the new rack on, and save $500 compared to dealer costs for replacing a rear rack. Well, replacing a rear rack would have been easy had all these not sheared off and whatnot. I mean, this one right here, I think, let's see here. Yeah, so right there, I'm gonna have to flatten that, straighten it out. This one right here, which has another piece, that's gonna have to be straightened around, re-welded, all that. But it looks like it's gonna be fairly simple just to do with the MIG welder. So yeah, on to the next step. All right, I'm gonna try that again. Hopefully with me being between the welder and the camera, you can hear me a little better. Essentially what I've done is I've more or less lined these brackets up, and it looks crude. I haven't done anything to it, flux cord wire and everything. Just welded it up, and then some of the holes from where they made the bracket kind of welded it up and everything. I filled those in with weld because I was not impressed with how little welds are actually holding those things on. So we can get over here and kind of point this bulky thing it down. I gotta do some welding underneath, and a little bit of this, hit it with the grinder, make it look pretty, and hopefully I got it straight enough that it will mount up with the rack and have a decent setup. Hopefully I got that about right. But yeah, so I'm gonna hit it with the grinder, see what spots I need to finish doing some welding on, maybe bend it and weld some reinforcements onto it, this and that, see if I just get them placed. I'll probably take the rack itself, connect it up to it, and then figure out the placement for the front brackets, because I'm pretty sure they go on the underside, and these things were just, I mean, resting up against the edge, and a little weld here, a little weld here, and that's all that holds the front bracket on. For this whole thing, with a 176 pound rating, I am not impressed. I'd call that a welding defect, or frankly, not enough welding, because yeah, that just sheared right off. I probably didn't even get the penetration it needed for the tubing here. Yeah, it just did next to nothing. So onto the grinding and cleaning it up a little bit and see what else I can do and weld it up and give it some more reinforcements. A lot better than what it had from the factory. Well, alrighty. Light grinding on it. Weld's not absolutely perfect, so I'll probably put some filler in and re-weld some of it, re-grind some of it. But the rack actually bolts up to it, so my bending and putting the pieces back in and welding it Looks like I just have to attach the brackets up front to help hold them in place, tack them on, take the rack off, finish welding them, and I should be back in action. Let's see here. Get this a little closer. Yeah, kind of see how the welds are. The bolts, again, the welds. And I filled in the gaps because there is, a gap in here and a gap in the back for, I guess, when they bent the metal pieces, and I just chose to weld them, fill them in, and make it a little more solid of a bracket. Because from the welding I see on this, granted it's probably all machine welded and everything else, for a 176 pound rating for how little welds were on it, I don't even know. Granted, I'm not a welder, but I can weld well enough. I don't know if I would have given it a almost 200 pound rating for how few welds were on those little tiny brackets, for how easily they sheared off when Honda said, "Oh, he must have overloaded it. That's the only reason it broke." No, I had maybe a little more than half the rated weight on the thing, and even with the metal cage that was clamped onto the rack, going out into the trails around Steens Mountain, and no, I from what I've seen of these welds, yeah, I'm not surprised they broke it all, not one bit. So throw some more welds on here and do a little bit more here and there with the brackets and piecing everything together, and I'll put some extra welds on there to make me feel a whole lot better for the next trip, which makes me wonder, maybe I should take apart the front end for the plastics and see how well those brackets are for that rack, because now I'm curious. Although so far it hasn't given me any trouble. Maybe I just got unlucky with this one. Hard to say exactly, so I'll probably just run it because it's still under manufacturer's warranty. They just claimed this wasn't a defect of theirs, which, given the welds that were there, I think was a defect, because the welds, they weren't much of anything. Because well, you see with this piece, it pulled out here, and there's really not much anything there. It's literally just a little piece sticks to it, and they just little weld, and that's supposed to hold 1/4 of 176 pounds with this thing rocking and rolling everywhere. I'm not buying it, so yeah. Off to the next part and have some fun with that. Okay, well, added some more welds in, got the 2 front brackets on, got them welded up and welded around the top sides, and they're actually around on the inside as well, probably not able to be seen, but they are welded on with, well, probably more than they were from the factory, because that those well, this one in particular, for how smooth it was, for how it I don't know, maybe it got a millimeter penetration at best. The welds, they did not penetrate on that one, which, if I had to guess, based on the wear, the bending, and how the brackets broke and everything, I'd say that was the first one just to pop off, just because it was really just on for looks. It had no penetration on the weld whatsoever on both sides of it. It was hidden just for show. I think it took the paint with it. It's about all it took with it. And that would have caused, well, that one coming off, this one took a bit of metal with it, so it got, penetration, and these brackets broke off from, well, their main assembly and sheared along the lines. But since I filled in a lot of that with weld, my guess is that one popped off. The loading of the machine and the rough terrain caused excessive flex, because, well, 3 out of 4 points, and caused these rear brackets to break and the front one to break off. It took a little bit of metal with it, but it didn't have much penetration either. So they've been welded on the front and on the back side and filled in, and I got some pretty good penetration with the weld. I think I was doing about 67 amps with a 035 on the this cheap MIG welder. So overall, it fits. I'm gonna put the rack on, once more, put the bolts in just loosely, making sure it's all lining up right, and then probably get some basic paint that, give it a little bit of protection, and then start putting it back together. Alright, quick little bit, just put the bolts in for the rack just lightly, and not fully tightened, but we have a rack again, an attached rack. So next, gotta find some basic spray paint, take it off, paint it, give it a little protective, and then reassembly. So, but it is on slight play, but that's because it's just the bolts that are holding it on are just barely threaded on. So I am happy. Oops, try and fall over, trip over my own feet. Put that down. All right, a familiar look. Rack is bolted on, still have to put the pins in for the fenders and everything else, and get all that put back together, and then plug in all my wiring, make sure she fires up. I disconnected a lot of the I guess the main computer up there just for the welding, just for the sake of doing so. So I gotta put everything back together, and I think for the meantime I'm gonna just hook up my main wires for my front light bar on this. Maybe not, I may think about redoing the design and everything else, but overall, rack's back on, it's nice and solid. Welded the brackets on the outside, actually made sure I got good penetration compared to the manufacturer, those welds. Probably what led to all my problems, and ultimately some cracking here in the plastics and this and that, which, the plastics potentially get a piece down the road, but so far it doesn't seem the cracks are going to interfere with the writing. It's just cosmetic for the most part. So I'm just going to keep going with that and get this thing put back together and tested. Yeah, so far so good. And yeah. All right, battery hooked up. Still got to finish my electrical wiring and hookups and everything else and put it all back, but for giggles, I think I got everything connected. Let's try and start it. And, well, apparently I didn't break it. Starts right up, so yay. Time to put it back the rest of the way together, and just like a new machine, relatively speaking. Well worth it. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe if you would. I'm always doing something. Some kind of fun, I think. Thank you. Well, it is put back together, and let's just, for the sake of trying, but oops, I forgot to press that back down. Almost done. There we go. There. Back together, good as new. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching. Guess I'm turning my back to the camera. On to the next project.